Hello and welcome to another episode of Geared Toward Gear. My name is Sean and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're taking another look at the CRKT CEO. So if you've been watching the channel, you'll know that I did a video on this knife a while back. I guess it's probably been a month or so, maybe 6 weeks. I'm not quite sure. And that video's done really well, actually. It's been viewed something like 12,000 times, maybe. I got a lot of agreement. And if you remember, or if you haven't seen it, I really liked a lot about the knife in terms of its design and concept, but in execution and deployment, I really had some issues. And so I had tons of comments on that video, a lot of people agreeing with me and a lot of people very adamantly disagreeing with me, calling me a crybaby, and that's all good. You know, I've got pretty thick skin, so I'm not too worried about that. But recently, the CEO has found its way back into my life. It wasn't something I sought out. It wasn't given me by the company or anything like that, but I received a CRKT CEO and I messed with it for a few days and my thoughts have changed a little bit. So this is just kind of a follow-up, I guess, to my initial video. So do I love this knife? No, I do not love this knife. I still do not love this knife. What I do love about it, as I said in my initial video, is the design. I think the blade shape and the handles, the texture on the handles, if I can get it to focus, is just really attractive. Nice, slender kind of gentleman's or ladies folder for an office setting, or maybe, you know, if you wear scrubs at work, you know, a nurse or something like that, or anywhere you want to be a little discreet and carry something that's lightweight in like a shirt pocket or in your pants pocket. I think it's a great design and I really like it. My main wish was that they made this a flipper. But the biggest complaint that I had in my first video was the deployment. So I'm here to tell you that people make mistakes, okay? So I'm certainly not perfect, far from it, in fact. And being still what I consider very new to YouTube, I consider my channel to be still in the infant stage. It's only been around for, I don't know, 3 months, maybe 4 months. I'm not perfect, and I think I screwed up a little bit in the first video. And what I mean specifically is that I really wanted to be thorough when I first reviewed this knife. So when I received it, I carried it constantly, and I even made it a point for a couple days to deploy this knife just over and over, use it for anything and everything that I possibly could. Letter opening, box opening, food prep, I mean, you name it. I was using the hell out of this thing. And what I did, and the mistake that I made, is I overused it. And so when I filmed that first video, I had just come off of a day, the day prior, where I had opened this thing about 150 times that day. And the day before that, I had probably opened it at least 200 times. And my thumb was totally raw and in pain because I overdid it. Realistically, we open our knives, 2 to maybe 10 times a day, depending on your scenario, at least for EDC. I mean, if you're in a work setting where you use a knife for work, you may open it more often, but I overdid it. I opened it way too many times in a short period of time. And in doing so, my thumb was just destroyed, and I really didn't like the deployment. I still have some issues with it, but it's become much easier for me to deploy this knife because I'm now using it the way it's intended to be used. So one of my complaints initially was that the butt end of the knife here, the steel, it's got some sharpness to it on the corners. It's got a rounded profile, but the corners are a little sharp. And the way I hold it when I open it, it kind of rests in my palm and kind of dug in. Again, I did that hundreds of times. But when I do it a few times in a day, it's not really an issue anymore. The thumb stud, although I still think it should be a flipper, I still think CRKT should redesign this or at least offer it as a flipper. It's definitely easier to open now. And the main reason for that is that my thumb doesn't freaking hurt from opening it 200 times. It's not a perfect deployment, but it's not difficult or painful. It's not the easiest knife to deploy, but it's not difficult. So I guess I'm here to tell you that, I've got to eat a little bit of crow and tell you that I am an imperfect person and an imperfect YouTuber. And even calling myself a YouTuber sounds weird to say that out loud, but the CEO is not the total pain in the ass, just destroy your thumb knife that I think I made it out to be in that first video. So all the good things I said about it are still true. The design, the aesthetic, the pocket clip, the blade shape, the lightweightness, everything about it, I still really enjoy. The biggest issue I have with it currently is not the deployment or the butt of the knife digging in my palm. It's actually closing it. And that's simply because there's not much real estate provided to get your thumb in there. So it can be a little challenging, and it's just a hair sharp, the actual liner lock itself, just a hair. But again, using it, say 5-6 times in a day, not a huge issue, but that's my biggest gripe, honestly, at this point, is closing it, actually. The opposite of what I was complaining about last time. So it's not something that I'm EDCing or probably will EDC, but this has lived since I got it. By the time this video posts, I'll probably have had this for at least 3 weeks. And it now lives in my office, kind of as a dedicated letter opener. And for that, it is perfect. I mean, this blade shape being, not being a tall blade and being nice and slender, it is an ideal letter opener. It opens boxes just fine as well. I use it for that. But this is a dedicated office letter opener for me, essentially. And in that capacity, it works just fine. For an EDC knife, it can be just fine as well. I just choose not to carry it as an EDC because I have other options that I prefer. But yeah, so I guess, that's about it. I'm just here to tell you that it's not a total piece of junk. And I don't think I made it out to be a piece of junk, but I definitely have learned some things about it and learned some things about how I go about doing things when I do reviews, in that I want to be thorough, but I don't want to overdo it to a point where I'm going to end up with an opinion or a viewpoint that may not be realistic. And so, yeah, the CRKT CEO I think is a perfectly serviceable EDC knife, so long as you can figure out the deployment, which after having it now for a few weeks, I've got it figured out. It doesn't hurt as long as I don't do it 100 times in a day. So CRKT CEO Part 2, redemption, I guess, to a certain extent. So that is it. That's all I got for you. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.